Howdy, and welcome to the channel. And today we're going to go over one of my more recent expensive purchases that I've actually had. And that is going to be the Bambu Labs X1 Carbon, also known as the X1C. So let's go over this unit a little bit. This model is a little bit different than some of the other ones that are out there. If you're starting to look into different 3D printers, you're going to look at models like the Ender series. They're very, very popular. There's some other ones out there that are just as popular. And I started going down this road, and there is so much information and there are so many different ways that you can get into 3D printing. This is one of the most expensive ways that you can get into 3D printing at home versus, say, one of the less expensive Enders or something along those lines.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
But the thing I liked about this one and what actually drove me to this one versus the other ones is this one is so well designed that you put your print into it and you tell it to print and it does its thing. You come back a couple hours later or a couple of days later and your print's done. And I have printed all sorts of things with this at this point, and everything has turned out great. The few items that I've had that have turned out poorly have not actually been because of the printer. It's been because I have had bad bed adhesion, which we will cover in this little brief intro to 3D printers. And it also has to do with not having properly dried filament. And I will show you how to resolve that problem as well. So you may be asking yourself, why is a tool guy using a 3D printer? This kind of matches up, but it really doesn't, because let's face it, most of the people who are in the trade don't have time to fiddle around with something like this, because traditionally 3D printers require a lot of fiddling around. There's a lot of work you have to do. To get a print to work, you may attempt that print one time, or with some of the cheap ones or ones that don't have as good of a bed sling in it, those you might have to print 5, 6, even 10 or 20 times to get it to come out the way you want it to look. And then you have the lay lines. Do they actually work? Are they laying appropriately? Or do you have to do a lot of fine work after the fact to make it look really good, depending on what you're printing? Now for me, I'm not printing models. You can get little miniatures, and if you're going to be doing something like that, you want to look at resin printers. You don't want to look at one of these. And this is spools of basically plastic. They have different stuff in it. It's called spools of filament, and you're going to actually have the spool unroll, and that's what's going to go through a hot tip end that gets stupidly hot, so do not touch it, but the filament gets pushed into it, and out of that is called an extruder. It actually extrudes out the plastic. And the layer machine actually understands what's going on, and it actually slices it. And that's what most people call it, is a slicer, but you can actually look at it as layers. It's going to print layer by layer with the head moving around. Now this one's a little bit different. This has the bed that moves up and down, and now a lot of manufacturers are actually moving to this design. There was other companies that did it before Bambu Lab, but they were the ones who really took it to the next level. And that's what I like about this. I didn't want to get into 3D printing and have to fiddle around with everything. I talked to so many people. Big shout out to Tim. Thank you very much, Tim, for helping me decide that this was it. He has an Ender. He likes his Ender, but he told me, be ready to mess with it a lot to get a good print. And I didn't want to have to do that. I wanted to be able to take and just print something like this. This is just a skip bow case, really simple case overall, and it actually holds skip bow within it. And I've actually got this one expanded enough that I can put the instructions in here with it as well, because skip bow is one of those games that whenever we want to play it, but we don't always remember the instructions. So if the electricity is out, which is usually whenever we play games like this, then having the instructions inside of it is a great thing to do. So I've actually printed out one for skip bow. I printed out one for phase 10 and printed out one for Uno. Now you'll see that these are actually pretty unique. These have color inlays within them. That is one of the fancy features with this particular unit. You can see this top part. This is not actually part of the 3D printer. This is the 3D printer. This holds 4 different spools of your filament. So this is called an AMS. And what this does is it actually communicates with the printer, and the printer says, hey, I want to print with red. So the spool says, okay, here's how much red I have. Here's my red spool. Start feeding the red spool into the extruder. And so it goes through all these little PTF tubes that are behind it and goes down into the hot end, and it will start printing. Then whenever it sees that, oh, I have a different color, for example, we have white with a skip bow, well, now we need to pull from the white spool. So the printer says, hey, AMS, I need the white spool. It undoes the red, and then it starts pushing the white spool down through the PTF tubes, and it actually has what's called poop. It literally extrudes some out the back, and then it rolls out into what's called the poop chute. We all lovingly call it that. And it's literally excess filament that you purge through the system. Because the last thing you want is to have red and then pink and then white mixed in here. You want it to have very distinct colors on it. And so that is what is very special about this Bambu Lab. Now, whenever I got this Bambu Lab, there was only a couple of others on the market that did something similar to this, and they weren't nearly as good as this. This genuinely took that and just absolutely took it to the next level. And you can actually hook up multiples of these AMSs if you want to. So you can print, I believe, we'll put it on screen, but I believe it's up to 16 different filaments that you can have connected to it. So that is the beauty of having this AMS. Now, whenever you buy the X1 carbon, they are expensive. So please understand that this is not a cheapie. A lot of people make fun of me for buying cheap Ryobi tools. I buy tools that work. That's my goal here, and this works. I don't want to fiddle around with it. I don't want to have to print 5, 6, 10 times to get something that looks this good. I want it to look this good the first time I print it. And that's what happened here. I literally printed it one time and it came out great. And on the sides, you can even see that where it says press, I've actually changed the colors of that as well because I wanted that to stand out. Now, the other cool thing about the printer is you can actually have within the inside, you have different bed types that you can put on. Now, this is the factory bed, and you can see I've used it quite a bit. And these last a really long time. As long as you take care of them, don't use caustic abrasives on them, don't use anything like Comet or Barkeeper's Friend, nothing like that. All you want to do is you want to run hot water over this with maybe 1 drop of like Dawn dishwashing detergent to get it really nice and clean. If you have a residue on it that's not coming off, you can use isopropyl alcohol to get that off as well. And as you can see, this bed is magnetic. So it actually holds on, and this is a reversible. So it actually holds on to it, and you have to slide it back in and set it properly within the tray. Now, the other nice thing about it, because it is a swappable bed, I have printed out this nice little holder here. You can actually purchase different style beds. This one has a carbon fiber look to it. So whenever you print your item, whatever is on here, this side down will have that carbon fiber look up here through it. On the other side, I have this really cool geometric pattern, and that once again will come through. So all of these beds that I have here are slightly different in style. And so this one has a weird rainbow look, and you can see that there's got some prints on it. You can see where I've had prints before. So before you use it, you see that there's a little bit of dirt on here. You don't want to try to print. This is when failures happen. So you want to make sure that this is completely clean by using that hot water primarily, and if you need to, just a little drop of the Dawn dishwashing detergent. And then you can see different style here. We have another different style here, and we have a much deeper look here. And then of course we have the gold textured bamboo PEI sheet that you can get from Bambu Labs as well. And all of these are going to give you different style appearances on your items. Now with these, you can print with different types of filament. Let me grab some of them here that I have. These are just a couple that I have. I have a bunch of filament. Once you get into this, you're going to end up really buying a lot of filament more than likely. You can start with the most basic, and that is going to be PLA. Now this is PLA marble, so it actually has a little bit of a marble look to it. And then we have PETG, and that's going to be the next up that most people typically go with. It's going to have different properties than the PLA. So you need to research and see which properties you need for your prints. Now, most of these here that you see, these are all going to be printed in PLA. And I have this really nifty thing here, and I bet most of you, being a tool channel, probably know what this is. This is a deburr tool. These work great on 3D prints because you're going to have jagged edges around it. So I printed out this nifty little system here to actually hold my deburring tool. And then you can print these other nifty little things. This is just a case that you can open up, and it holds all sorts of different Bambu Lab attachments and tools and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually a really neat system of what you can print, and it's ultimately up to you as to what you choose to print. So beside the bed adhesion issue that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I said there was one other thing that typically will be the problem, and that's actually the filament itself. So one of the issues with these filaments is many of them actually absorb water from the air. Whenever you have humidity, they're going to absorb it. Even if you have it inside an air-conditioned space, the likelihood of them having moisture within the air that the filament itself actually sucks out is quite a bit. And what I have noticed is if these are sitting inside the AMS for any extended period of time, I have to dry them out before I use them. Even whenever I get them from Bambu Labs themselves, I typically throw them in the dryer before I start using them. Some of them are a little bit more forgiving. For example, PLA, that is a very forgiving filament. That's why most people will tell you start with PLA, do your initial prints with PLA, because that one will help you most of the time. And then you move to PETG. PETG can be very finicky whenever it comes to the amount of moisture that it can absorb. Then you have ASA. All the ASA that I have used, first of all, I love using ASA for my Ryobi prints because where I have my shop at, sunlight hits that area. PLA is going to have problems with UV. ASA doesn't have problems with UV. It is UV stable. So you can actually print with ASA, put it out where it's going to get hit by the sun, and it's going to be perfectly fine. I have stuff now that has been exposed for almost a year in the sun, and they are not brittle. I have had stuff of the PLA that has been exposed for a couple of months, and it just snaps. It is so brittle because it does not handle the UV. Plus it color fades, whereas the ASA doesn't color fade. So you have a moisture problem with these. How do we solve that? We solve that with a dryer. Now, there are different manufacturers out there for dryers. They actually have silica that you can put into the AMS. There's little trays in here, and you can see in the front, I actually have additional silica packs, and you can dry out the silica in something like this. You can buy silica all over the place. If you have an air compressor, you probably will have some type of a silica dryer on it. So it actually dries the air. It doesn't physically dry the silica. The silica actually absorbs the water, which is the point of it. And so we have something like this. Now, this is from Sunlu, as you can see, and they have a few different models of it. This is the one that I like the best that they currently have. Now, they have different solutions, but this one actually has a fan in it that rotates the air. There is a heating strip in the bottom. I guess you could put your hair in there. That took a long time to dry though. There's a heating element down in the bottom, and it just simply moves the air around. So you have a confined space. There is only two very small PTF tubes that come out through the top, because what you can technically do is leave your filament in here. If you have an unbelievably picky filament, an older filament that you have had a long time, and if it is exposed for about an hour, it becomes brittle, or it starts sputtering all over the place whenever you start printing out, then you want to keep it in something like this and actually pull it through here. Now, with the AMS, you actually have the nifty feature of being able to add anything you want on the rear. So you can see how the AMS comes down, feeds into this system here, and then it comes up through, and then it goes into the printer. Well, you can actually pull this off. It is a typical connector for like a 1/4 inch water line. And you can then put your PTFE tube in here and actually pull from your Sunlu filament dehydrator and put it directly in here. Now, you're not gonna have the features of the AMS, but you simply program into the Bambu what filament you're using, and it says, okay, I know what filament I'm using, and it proceeds to do what it is supposed to do. So the drying systems are very, very critical. And I had problems with some of my prints until I threw the filament into the dryer, and that fixes the problem. So again, if you have sputtering that's going on all over your print, more than likely, not always, but more than likely, you need a dryer. Throw it in there and get your filament dried out. So the very first time you look at the price of one of these 3D printers, you're probably going to be shocked. I certainly was.
Flashback.
One of the most expensive ways.
Oh my goodness!
I wasn't expecting to spend this much money on a 3D printer. I scrimped and saved, had waited for birthday money, Christmas money, told the wife I don't want to buy anything extra. For me, I want to save up and I want to buy this. So I spent several months of saving and scrimping and selling other things so that I could actually get this 3D printer. So please understand, it's not a cheap entry fee, but what is the point of buying something like this and what can you do? You saw the little Uno things and you saw the little storage things, but the main thing for me, and this is actually why I initially wanted to buy it, is I wanted a storage solution that I could have for my Ryobi tools. Now, with the Ryobi tools, everybody knows that their battery has been consistent for years. Thank you, Ryobi. We appreciate that. But that means that we have a known variable. This is absolutely known. This hasn't changed in decades, and it's probably not going to be changing anytime soon. So that means that you then can take that into a 3D modeling tool and actually model stuff out. Now, this came from another model, but it was flat. And so you can actually take these things and redesign them, which is what I have done. I actually put a bevel on this and altered it because flat against the wall wasn't going to work for some of my tools. So I needed a lot of mine that were actually beveled out so that my tools could stay on it. And the system that works here is we actually have these little feet that go onto the pegboard itself. And you can see on the end, these are not flat, they're actually in a V. And that V slides in perfectly into our foot here. And we can print one for the top and one for the bottom, depending on which way you're gonna orient this. And I've even come up with a dual system that has 8 of the feet on it, so you can put 2 of these side by side. But I also have, for the 4-volt system, you'll see every now and then behind me in my videos, you will actually see that I have the carver and the high-speed rotary tool stored on one of these. And so I took somebody else's design. That's the nice thing about the community for 3D printers, is the vast majority of people give it out and say, please use it, please modify it. And that's what I've done. I have taken designs from other creators and I've modified them for my own use. And some people have taken mine and modified them for their own use. And that's perfectly fine for most people in the creative space. And that allows you then to make whatever you want. So my 4-volt system uses the exact same foot. So now I can actually put 2 of the 4 volts side by side on one of the 4-spot foots. The other thing that we have is we have battery holders, and you've seen on my videos I have a couple of different style battery holders. This one simply hooks into the pegboard and then it comes down, and these actually go into the peg, and then you simply drop your battery down in it and it holds your battery for you. And a few videos ago, I actually talked about a system that I made. And you can see there's actually connectors in here, and I have a power connector back here. And the inside, you can actually open it up, and this is all 3D printed. The springs here are 3D printed, and in here, there is wiring to connect this to the port. This port then can go to a wall wart or power brick and actually send out the proper voltage for your particular tool. Now, this doesn't work on everything, but my bug zapper and light, we actually keep that one in the house all the time because we have bugs that come in. We're out in the country and we have chickens and we have other things outside, and so it attracts flies. So every now and then we have flies that come in. Well, we want this thing to run all the time, so we literally have it plugged into this. I don't want to waste batteries on that. By the way, Ryobi, that's one reason why I want to be able to turn that thing on permanently, not just have it shut off after 8 hours. But this allows me to do that. So those are the joys of 3D printing. You can actually use it to print truly useful items like this. You're not stuck doing things that you might not feel are as important, like these card holders. All depends on your preference. Some of you might actually deem that to be the worthy cause to purchase a 3D printer, and some of you might actually think that these Ryobi holders. By the way, if you're not into Ryobi, that's okay. They have the same thing for Milwaukee. They have the same thing for DeWalt. They have the same thing for Makita. If you name it and it has a battery that goes into it, they probably make a similar tool. And if they don't make exactly what you want, that's the joy of taking a 3D modeling tool and actually grabbing the model and starting to work with it and manipulate it to make what you specifically want, which is exactly what I have done with these. I wanted something that was specific for me. So that goes over the 3D printers, and it kind of gives you a nice little 101 aspect with them. If you have any questions about the 3D printer, I will do my best to answer them. Just leave it in the comments down below. I love hearing all of the different questions about different tools. I even get some questions about some of my old motorcycle repair videos. So I thank you for tuning in. I thank you that you allow me to share those things with you, especially great comments like this one. Now this one goes over one of those motorcycle repair videos that I did, and it's recent on there, but I really appreciated that they took the time to actually leave a review for me and let me know that it still impacts them, that it actually still influences people out there to make a repair on their motorcycle. And I have had people contact me and say they never ever would have taken a chance to do that if it wasn't for my video. So thank you very much for letting me know and giving me those positive comments. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.